Welcome back to Teen Story Share. This week we're continuing from Into the Heartless Wood by Joanna Ruth Meyer. I'll put links to the last 2 weeks that we've been reading from this book below in case you haven't been following along. And we're about to read 2 chapters from Owen because they're short chapters. And let's just dive right in. It's only when I crawl into bed that I realize I forgot to tell Father about my errand. His unexpected plans for my future drove it right out of my mind. I wake early enough to catch him before he leaves for Brennan's farm, trying not to see his red eyes, the grief that hangs on him like a physical thing. I didn't sleep more than a handful of hours after leaving the observatory. He looks like he might not have slept at all. I'm going to Scythe University today. Surprise sparks in his face. That time of year already? I nod. Every year, my father files an abbreviated record of his annual star charts in the university library. Astronomers all across the continent do the same, scientists pooling our knowledge, collecting it for future generations. I went by myself last year, by train, and the 3 years before that my mother went with merchants traveling along the old road across the plains. I'm to take the 9 o'clock train from the village. I think about what the king's man told me yesterday and wonder if Father knows the wood has grown around the tracks. It will be perfectly safe, I lie. I'll spend the night in Scythe and be back tomorrow evening. I've arranged for Abuela to stay with Effa until then. I'm taking her the moment she wakes up. Father scratches the stubble on his jaw. Perhaps we don't need to file the charts this year. I'll only be gone a day, Father. He frowns. I've heard the wood has... The train is perfectly safe, I repeat hastily, and fast. I promise I'll be all right. I'll send you a telegram the moment I arrive, so you won't have to worry. Very well, he sighs, but I'll worry anyway. Don't open the window on the train, and take my knife. He nods at the decorative box on the shelf above the stove in the living room, where his hunting knife has resided for as long as I can remember. I don't think he's ever used it. Then he's out the door in a rush, and I put my bar of brith in the oven and brew tea, obediently adding the hunting knife to my pack. The star charts I'm taking to the library are ready, bundled together in a waterproof cylinder, and fitted with a leather strap to make it easy to carry. Abuela toddles into the kitchen just as I'm about to go and wake her. She gobbles down a thick slice of bar of brith and gulps milk and porridge as if I never actually feed her. Then I'm bundling her into my arms and slinging my pack and the star chart case over my shoulder. We start on the path to Bladin village. It would be vastly easier if we had a horse or even a donkey. Abuela grows enormously heavy after only a short walk, but animals don't like being so close to the Gwithin's wood. We had a goat for a while when Abuela was a baby. Her milk dried up, and she jumped the fence and was never seen again. Even chickens don't last at our house. They stop laying after a week or 2, then molt all their feathers and die off one by one. We gave up keeping animals altogether and get our milk and eggs and meat from Brendan's farm now. At least the garden grows, so we're never short on fruits and vegetables. Sometimes I swear plants grow faster in our garden than they really ought to, as though they pull some kind of invigorating magic from the soil that feeds the Gwithin's trees. What I really want is a bicycle. I don't travel long distances often enough to really need one, and I couldn't ride one with Abuela, but I want one all the same. The newfangled contraptions are all the rage in Brindle City, according to Father's newspapers, and there are a few in our village now too. It's faster to carry Abuela than to let her walk, even if my arm muscles are screaming by the time Brennan's farm comes into view. I leave her with Eva, Brennan's wife, and then trudge into the village alone, waving at my father, who's hard at work in the fields and probably doesn't even see me. The air smells fresher and the sun burns hotter the farther I trudge away from the wood. Dust swirls beneath my feet, and I've grown quite hot by the time I arrive at the village train station. It really doesn't warrant the word station, being more of a small wooden platform sandwiched between the telegraph relay station and the inn, which is where you purchase your ticket. I step inside the squat stone building. It's dim and cool, a welcome relief from the sun. I wait for my eyes to adjust before stepping up to the counter. A dark-eyed girl stands behind it, polishing glasses with a rag, her long hair tied back at the nape of her neck with a bright ribbon. Her cream blouse has puffy sleeves with cuffs tight at her wrists, and her high-waisted skirt has buttons running all down the front of it. The sight of her makes my face warm. There aren't many young women in Blodden Village, but Merwin Griffith is by far the prettiest. Smartest, too. She's a poet and has had several pieces published in the Braindle City newspaper. Someday I'm going to work up the nerve to talk to her, properly, about astronomy or music or books. Maybe marry her. I haven't quite figured out all the details yet. "Morning, Owen. What can I do for you?" She smiles at me, and for a moment I lose the power of speech. Ticket, I remember, for the 9 o'clock train to Scythe." "Barely made it," says Merwin, glancing at the small clock on the wall behind her. She pulls out a paper ticket from the till and writes my name. I hand over the fare. For a moment I don't move, just stand there awkwardly, trying to think of something clever to say. She smiles at me again, her eyes bright and laughing. "Better hurry, Owen Merrick, you'll miss your train." I stammer something nonsensical in reply, and step outside and onto the train platform, upbraiding myself for being such a coward. But there wouldn't have been time to properly speak with her anyway, because she's right. The train rattles up that moment and I climb aboard, handing over my ticket to the dark-skinned steward in the blue and gray cap. I slide into a seat by the window. The car is at the very end of the train, right before the caboose. And it's mostly empty, the only other passenger a pale-skinned old man in a tailed coat reading a newspaper. The headline says something about King Elenian drafting soldiers into his army. The old man's top hat sits in the vacant seat beside him, and I realize I've forgotten my own in my hurry to make the train. I'm not in the habit of wearing it. It's still stuffed in the coat closet somewhere. At least I put on my one and only suit, although it's rather too small for me now. I'll have to ask Father about getting a new one. Mostly I just wear Father's cast-off shirts and trousers. I haven't been to school in a year, and Abuela doesn't care how I'm dressed. I settle deeper into my seat and take a book out of my satchel. The train lurches into motion, the village and farms passing in a blur. It's not long before we plunge into the wood, the leafy green swallowing us whole. I push away my uneasiness, try to lose myself in the book. The old man across from me momentarily lays down his newspaper to pull his window shut. I wonder how many passengers are riding in the cars ahead of us. I wonder if the engineer has wax stuffed into his ears. I try to comfort myself with the thought that perhaps the noise of the train is loud enough to block out the song of the Gwithin's daughters. Yet I can't help but feel we're hurtling into danger. Hours pass. I eat my lunch, another piece of bara brith with a fat slice of ham and hot tea from my thermos. The train clatters on, the motion of the wheels on the rails dragging my eyelids down. A horrific screech of metal jolts me awake. The train car wrenches sideways and I'm thrown hard into the seat across the aisle, inches from the old passenger who lies limp against the shut window. His neck is bent at an odd angle and there's a smear of red on his temple. I stare at him, my thoughts dull and slow with shock. This is a nightmare, and in another moment I will wake up. But I don't. The train car shudders as it settles on its side, causing me to slide into the old passenger's body. He is stiff and cold, and a scream tears from my throat as I frantically, desperately pull myself back into the aisle. I'm shaky with horror, with the dawning awareness that gnaws at my mind. The train windows are over my head now. Branches press against the glass. They scratch and they scrape like they're trying to get in, and I know, even before the music twists suddenly through glass and metal and puts its claws in me. A tree siren derailed the train, and she's going to kill us all. The music calls me, commands me. The barbs dig deep and pull. Something inside my head thrashes, screams, fights. But my body obeys the siren's call. I pull myself across the seats, toward the door that leads to the next car. It's sideways now, bent and jammed from the crash. The tree siren's song clamors in my head, yanking me like a beast on a chain. I don't want to leave the train. I want to hide from her. I want to tuck myself into a shadowy corner and pray she passes me by. The music doesn't let me. I put my shoulder into the door, throw myself against it again and again. I'm dimly aware of the pain in my arm, of the wound in my side from being thrown against the seat. The music writhes in every part of me. It's splitting me apart. I do not want to go to her, and yet I do. There is terror and desire, a distant horror, a further distant pain. I must get through the door. I must. The door gives. I push through, hissing as a piece of jagged metal slices into my leg. The music pulls me. I haul myself from the train and tumble out into the wood. Chapter 4. Dirt grinds under my palms. The cut in my leg drips blood on the ground. I gulp for air, my limbs strangely heavy. Screams echo in the wood ahead of me, a jarring counterpoint to the music that twists into my soul. The train has been torn off its tracks. The cars scattered on the ground like discarded toys. They stretch on into the wood out of my sight line. Other passengers crawl from the cars ahead of me, some with broken arms or legs, many with wounds from the impact of the crash. All of them lie on the forest floor, limbs dragging across the tracks. All of them wait, as I do. The music overwhelms me, pins me like a bug to the earth between the railroad cars. I can't move my arms, my legs. Her song commands me to stay, to wait. My mind is screaming for me to run. My body doesn't listen. I can't move, can't think. I can hardly breathe. She will come. She will devour me, and I will let her do it. Horror is a yawning gulf inside of me. I will never see Father or Abuela again. From the front sections of the train comes the same sound again and again, the pop and crack of something breaking. I realize that it's bodies, that it's bones. Overhead, wind ripples through the trees. Branches groan and leaves whisper. Through it all, her song swells and swells. It will swallow the world. It will swallow me. I don't even have the will to clap my hands over my ears, to shut out the all-consuming sound of it. I just lie here and wait for her to come. I shake. Father, Abuela, tears blur my vision. I glimpse the siren through the trees, a flash of green and silver. The screams grow louder, swelling toward me like an ocean tide, but they do not block out her song. They don't even muffle it. She comes nearer, to a car 5 down the line. She has the vague form of a woman, but she's very, very tall and unnaturally thin. Her skin is silver white bark, and she's clothed in green and gold leaves round as coins. Branches burst from her hands and catch hold of the train carriage, ripping it open as easily as if it were an egg. She drags a passenger out by the throat, and with one vicious twist, she snaps his neck and flings him to the ground. A scream tears out of me. I try to fight against the music. I tell myself to get up, to run, but my body will not obey me. So I just lie here. I lie here and watch her slaughter them all. Bodies, so many bodies. She scatters them over the grass, flings them onto the wreck of the train. They're broken and bloody, some with twisted limbs, some with their final screams frozen in their vacant eyes. Vines spring out of the ground and pull them into the earth. She is 2 cars down from me, 1. With every person she kills, she kneels beside them for a moment, and something hanging at her throat pulses with a silver light. She never stops singing. I feel her music in every part of me, throbbing in my veins, heavy in my bones. It will be the last thing I ever hear. An eerie red light slants through the trees, and some distant part of me realizes that, beyond the wood, the sun is setting. I won't live to see the stars. Won't have the chance to tell my father and Abuela goodbye. I weep. There are no passengers in the train car ahead of me, or if there were, they were killed in the crash. A mercy for them. I think of the old man in his newspaper, dead on impact. He will not have to die as I will, in the grip of a nightmare, at the hands of a monster. She comes toward me, her movement wavering and strange, like a tree bowing in the wind. She will put her claws in me. She will break me in half and fling me to the ground for the earth to swallow, like it swallowed all the rest. But she stops 3 paces away from me and closes her mouth. Her song is cut off. She stares at me. The tree siren stares at me. She is even more monstrous up close. Her hair is silver, tangled with yellow leaves. She wears a crown of violets. There is blood on her hands. I shake, dimly aware that my will is flooding back to me. My body buzzes with needle-like pain, blood rushing back into limbs that have been asleep. My mind is a riot of terror. I still can't move, fixed by her gaze as I was fixed by her song. There is a pendant at her throat, hung on a twist of vine. It glows a faint silver, reflecting in her eyes. She opens her mouth, and I shrink back. I have lost my chance. I should have fled the instant she stopped singing. "Run!" she snarls. And next time we will hear from the monster again. Have a good weekend, and see you again next time. Bye.